heard a lot about the policy, and a lot of the questions in the Slido platform were also about the grid. How will it develop? How will it cope with the future challenges? And that's what we're about to talk on this stage next, in our next panel discussion, the Baltic grid. All three Baltic countries are connected to the European electricity grid, which is the major milestone for our energy independence and security, which cannot be understated. At the same time, the grid has to look forward several steps ahead, take into consideration so many factors which can be a challenge. But I believe that our next panel will be ready and to talk about these topics. So I hope you help me welcome on the stage, first of all, the first speaker, the board member of the TSO of Latvia Augstsprieguma tīkls, Mr. Gatis Junghāns. Let's welcome him on the stage with a round of applause. Next up, the head of the Renewable Energy Center at Litgrid, Mr. Ignas Junevičius. Welcome. The CEO of the TSO of Estonia, Elering, Mr. Kalle Kilk. Welcome. Joining them, the head of strategy at the 50 Hz transmission, Mr. Olivier Feix. Welcome. For the first time in WindWorks history, we have a speaker from the Svenska Kraftnat, which we are excited about, the head of the strategic development department, Mr. Leif Pettersson. Welcome, Leif.
Good to meet you.
And moderating this panel, he is an energy market analyst and also a highly skilled moderator. Let's welcome on the stage Reinis, Āboltiņš. Reinis, the stage is yours.
Oh, thank you, and the pleasure is also mine. So not only the stage, gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen. Right, well, the grid is basically bust. So yeah, there's simply too much renewables coming in, right, in the near future. No, probably no. It is not so bad as it sounds. So let me kick off with giving you a minute, just 1 minute, to make an initial statement, each of you. What do you consider? So basically, what's the point of view of your organization, and what you consider one or two main things that need to be tackled these days? And then I'll kick off with some wicked questions. Whoever, I don't know, Leif, you're closest to me, you can kick off. I mean, that's fine. I mean, you're the first timer, so yeah, you're welcome. We are very happy to have you
Right,
here.
so my name is Leif Pettersson, and I'm coming from Svenska Kraftnat. And I think that is sort of the Baltic Sea. Some kind of a fun fact, I'm from Gotland, so we're in the middle of the Baltic Sea, so that works out very well.
You're neutral.
Yeah,
almost
exactly.
neutral.
Yeah, almost neutral. But also, I think that looking from the Swedish perspective, I think the good thing for us is that we are actually 99% fossil-free in Sweden. With a lot of renewables and things are happening a lot. What our challenges are that we have the target of more than double the energy consumption due to industrializations and other things. Which is our sort of a large target that we are working on internally. We're building the grid. We're working on integrating the renewables. So that's part of it. But the other part is also this electricity market connecting to other countries, which I believe is sort of partly why I'm here. I think sort of a little bit.
I suspect so.
Yeah.
Thank you for the introduction,
Yes.
Olivier. To you, I mean, Germany, everybody is looking towards Germany. It's the engine of Europe. So plenty of consumption and big market for offtake.
Yes, indeed. But today I'm super happy to be in this region because this is a very dynamic one. And I think we have also quite a few things to learn in Germany. And when I look at what the three Baltic countries are doing, what our colleagues from the TSOs are doing, not only for synchronization, but also for integrating renewables, I'm really, really impressed. And I'm very thankful that in this conference, you're giving such a prominent role to grids, so that you're taking a bit of time to listen and to discuss with boring grid people, because I think that it's this kind of regional cooperation that you're having here, and that we can maybe discuss also a little broader around the whole Baltic Sea basin, is really a very good opportunity. And we are extremely excited, in fact, discussing with you, developing projects with you, because this regional way of combining the strength of Europe is really the future we see. And yes, it's challenging for a grid operator, but it's also quite fun times, and times where we constantly learn, and we are ready to push the boundaries of what is feasible more and more to make the future as renewable as possible.
The biggest issue for German grid being?
The big need of reinforcing the connections within the country. The development of hybrid interconnectors to combine the different areas in Europe, and in fact to unlock much more flexibility. Exactly what was discussed beforehand is the same story in Germany, in order to accommodate with more and more renewables.
So plenty of interesting work still to do. All right, excellent. Kalle, tere. In Estonia, everything is hip and cool always, or isn't it?
Yeah, no reason to worry. Only two things, maybe: energy security and prices.
Oh, that's
small things.
Small things, yes.
Yeah, actually, keeping in mind that you can really focus on really only on one or two issues. Our issue, which we are focusing on, is improving security by reducing the, let's say, need for imports. And also, on the same time, it's very important for the society and the economy to keep the price level affordable. So at least our owner has given us expectation to take care of those two little problems.
I'm confident we can handle that. I mean, the TSOs can handle that, and TSOs can do anything. They can handle anything, even the high prices, right? Ignas.
Well, first of all, Labdien Riga, thank you for having me. Yeah, same small issues, small challenges applies to Lithuania as well. Our nearest and most pressing questions are energy security, obviously, and building out the renewables, obviously, facilitating flexibility in our grid, obviously, and keeping the prices low. And not much to add, I think.
We are squeezing it down to a few very important topics. Gatis, you probably completely disagree with your colleagues.
Yeah, 2 points from Latvia. First, regarding connections. At Latvia, there are 2 gigawatts of active building projects of renewable connections at the transmission grid. We have issued more than 5 gigawatts of permits, technical rules for connection. But at AST, we estimate that total connection capacity in Latvia is 10 gigawatts. So just the recent Electricity Market Act changes gives us a green light to offer 4 to 5 gigawatts more of connection capacity, which will be made public, and we will start to accept applications this June. And second point, balancing market. Baltic TSOs together established a Baltic balancing capacity market this February. Balancing capacity prices are quite incentivizing. Sometimes keeping balancing capacity available is more profitable than producing. And 2 weeks ago in Latvia, we qualified first wind park for participation in Baltic balancing market. So I encourage wind and solar parks also to look at the Baltic balancing capacity market as it seems and as it becomes practical that wind and solar, which everyone perceived as a cause of fluctuations, is actually a very good source of balancing capacities.
Thank you, Gatis. And probably we should not forget that new technologies are advancing and becoming cheaper and cheaper, and battery electric storage systems come handy into play, allowing to somehow flatten the pikes or the spikes of electricity prices, not only on the day-ahead market, but also most likely they will positively affect the leveling out of balancing capacity prices, right? So there's plenty of important issues actually on the table, and not least, of course, the interconnections, but some things which I identified already. So the ability of the current grid to take in more or additional new generating capacities. It's also interconnections, cross-border connections, connections between various price areas. That's more about Sweden probably, but there are still issues where we still have risk of bottlenecks. There are existing bottlenecks, and there can be quite high congestion prices when the electricity crosses the borders. So there's plenty of business, but there's also plenty of expense. Not least on the consumer side, but also the TSOs have to pay for certain services to the generators for simply keeping the reserve to be there just in case, that is to ensure energy security. So there are many other things, very interesting things in the region. So we have roughly 37 minutes, and I'll try to kick off with a quick question. Do you think that the Baltic grid, which we are focusing today on, is ready for significant additional generating capacities without immediate significant investment, say until year 2030? This is where I would like to focus briefly on the three Baltic TSOs. I don't know, maybe I will begin with Ignas, because I know that Lithuania is sort of ahead of the other two neighbors in terms of deploying renewable energy capacities. What would you say? Would you say, all right, so currently we are here, but I'm aware that you actually anticipate 8 terawatts of capacity by 2028. I mean, it's plenty of energy. Is the grid able to pick it all up?
Yeah, I think this question has been asked every year for many years now. The
situation is changing.
Situation is changing, but the question remains the same. There's almost a legend back in Lithuania that some 10 years ago or so, it was evaluated that at maximum, Lithuanian grid can support 500 megawatts of renewables.
That is additional, I mean...
That was in total. That was the, at the time, estimation of our grid. As time went on, life happened, people learned, and now we have more than 4 gigawatts of renewables in Lithuania, and we have another 10 gigawatts of reserved capacity, meaning we already evaluated the grid. We already said that, yes, we can connect that much. So, in fact, we feel very strongly that the Lithuanian grid is very much sufficient for, as you say, the next 5-6 years. Lithuanian national goal is to reach 100% of production from renewables by 2028. To put that number in the context, we need roughly 8 gigawatts of renewables to reach that goal. So today we have 4, we need 4 another, and we have 10 in the pipeline. So I can safely say that Lithuanian local grid is sufficient and ready. We also need, of course, to look into our cross-border situation, and I think we'll talk about this quite a lot in this panel. So there is a lot of ambition to have more connections with our neighbors, both in the Baltics and maybe further than that. But for Lithuanian developers, keep developing. We'll give you the grid. It's sufficient, yeah.
There's a nice document in place always at hand. It's called the 10-year network development plan, which TSOs are obliged to produce and update regularly on regular basis, so everybody can have a public eye and public control on what the TSOs have in mind in terms of network development plans. So there's of course the strengthening of the grid and interconnections as well. But let me go to Kalle. So of course, I mean, it's over 600 megawatts of wind capacity since we are in the wind conference, of course, and there's still coming. And are you comfortable with what is coming?
It's definitely going to be a bit of work to do in the grid. So when we consider Estonian target, the similar as Lithuanian, 100% only by year 2030, then currently we are roughly 40%, 45% of our demand is covered by renewables. So in order to reach 100%, we should need additionally more than 1,500 megawatts of new wind. So it's more than 3 times additional to the existing ones. And of course, like always, the first megawatts are always simpler, cheaper, less works in the grid. And our own prediction is so that getting roughly to 60 or 70% will pretty much doesn't take anything. Some local works. Getting to the 100% is already a huge amount of line constructions, more than 1,000 kilometers, and we have already started to plan this, and it's doable. It's not a problem. It's just a matter of like it was done. It was mentioned by the CEO of Ignitis that it has already been decided. It's been done already. This 5-year gap for us is somehow managed.
So it's covered.
Yes, but of course it takes a lot of effort from the people, but we already know what we're doing. But the question is actually what comes afterwards. So reinforcing the internal network doesn't really guarantee this abundance that was also mentioned. So that yes, we can pretty much get to let's say equilibrium, but not anything additional. And this demands huge amounts of additional interconnection capacities and so on.
So basically there's a thin line. We are sort of on the positive side currently, but it can easily switch, get over to the other side of the fence where we have to start worrying how much any additional capacities in the transmission grid might cost.
Correct.
Yeah, okay, got this. The situation in Latvia, probably we are not as revolutionary as Lithuanians and Estonians, but still, I mean, and there has been plenty of investment in the grid as well over the recent years.
Exactly. During past years, when we prepared our main grid for synchronization, in Latvia, we built more than 500 kilometers of high voltage lines, and this also serves as a preemptive capacity for renewable integration. So it's a multi-purpose investments in that sense. And there, of course, are local strengthening necessary connection points to build, but as regards main grid, it is ready to integrate 2030 goals.
Okay, so it means basically, all right, we can do it. We can pick up the extra renewable capacities currently in the pipeline without too much additional financing. But after that, it seems that all 3 Baltic states are more or less on the same page when it comes to further down the timeline, right? So we can reach the moment when we need additional significant investment beyond 2030 or something. Right, good. One word which was also mentioned, actually there were many words mentioned, but some of the things to build the discussion on, energy security, right? So basically the grid, the physical grid, is the backbone of any energy system, all right? So if there's no wires, no cables, no electricity, basically, unless there are small-scale, local island-type solutions, but we are speaking about in the energy system. So would you say, I don't know, I'm looking here at Olivier probably as representing biggest German TSO, the 50 Hertz. From your experience, what would you say? Would it be fair to distinguish between the main two important functions of the grid, that is ensuring energy security, that's secure physical supply of electricity, and the market function of the grid, because also at the same time, if the grid is not developed, the market won't function. It would be like it's stalling, there will be bottlenecks. Do you think it's fair to distinguish between these two? Or?
Yeah, this is a good question, especially against what we are experiencing in the last years and the whole geopolitical evolution as well. And I think if we're doing a good job as TSOs here around this table, and also within, of course, the Baltic states, but also around the whole Sei basin, I think the beauty of working together, interconnecting stronger, is that you don't have to choose either sovereignty or liquid market. But interconnecting our different areas means that, in fact, I like this clusterization picture that we just saw here from Ignitis, is that the region comes closer together, and Germany has also understood now that energy sovereignty with those countries that are your partner countries is super important. And that's why, in fact, I think we can all, as we're sitting here, benefit from more energy sovereignty if we're connecting better our markets and our renewables. We can decarbonize quicker, so go towards the green energy transition we all want to, and it can be done in connecting the markets and being much more efficient, so that in fact the pressure on keeping prices low is there as well. So that's why it's so interesting to discuss about interconnectors between our countries. That's why it's interesting to talk about hybrid interconnectors. What is a hybrid interconnector? It's one where you're connecting offshore wind parks and countries, so that when the wind is blowing, you're injecting electricity to the markets, and when wind is not blowing, we are connecting our markets to keep prices low. And that's why, in fact, we have to move away from, and here I'm not speaking for the Baltic countries, but for the rest of Europe, from little national optimization story, but think broader, think together, sit around the table, make regional planning, and then suddenly you discover that Europe becomes more energy sovereign and cheaper and more competitive, and we take our burden of the decarbonization as well.
Yes, fair enough. Here we come. I would like to talk to Leif a little bit, because it is our pleasure having Svenska Kraftnat for the first time for the first time in Latvia, this side of Östersjön.
Yeah.
So we are happy to have you here. I'm not sure if you will be happy answering my question there, but about interconnections between Sweden and the Baltic states. But of course, as previously mentioned, interconnections are an essential part of all the European common energy market or energy grid, therefore, because if no grid, no market. So, and it was also mentioned previously during the introductory speeches and the previous panel that electricity, well, there's a paradox that electricity flows not according to the laws of physics, but according to the laws, the commercial laws. So that in theory, where the price is higher, the electricity flows that way. But it's not that way in the Baltic states exactly, especially after the synchronization, which we can congratulate ourselves with. But we have only one interconnection, physical interconnection between the Baltic states and the rest of Europe, basically ensuring the balancing capacities and frequency control. So that is the Litpol link between Lithuania and Poland. And the analysis of data shows that in 2024, more than 50% of occasions of the time, the energy was flowing contrary to this commercial principle, was actually ensuring the balancing needs in the Baltic states rather than providing commercial flows. So, of course, the Baltic states are looking eagerly towards, well, in the evening they go down to the seaside and they look westwards and they're thinking, well, there's a country on the other side of this big lake called Sweden, Ungariket, Sverige. And if we would only have opportunity to connect this interesting place on the other side of the sea, we would get additional cheap electricity, because electricity is really cheap normally over there. But of course, there are also 4 price areas in Sweden itself, and there could be huge difference between Sweden area 1, which is north, where the Sami lands, and also the very south tip of Sweden. So it can be as high as in the Baltic states. So it's not exactly that there's paradise over there either, and you have your own north-south flow issues and east-west issues with Norwegians. There's war between Sweden and Norway basically looming because of this. And these are just a few things why allegedly Sweden and Swedish system operator has not been particularly happy to embrace new interconnections with the Baltic states. Am I correct? Or maybe just very briefly and diplomatically cast some light on that.
Yeah, right. But I think what Olivier was into, these hybrid connections type of things, and the market perspective on that, and security perspective, I think that all goes together, and I think you're right, it's sort of mutually dependent on each other. Low cost for the market integration type of things, the security perspective puts another perspective on what to do now than maybe 5 years ago. The discussion is different, definitely. And I think that what you're saying, it's also something you end up in some kind of a political discussion. Which
no politics,
no.
Just hardware.
No, but I think that is sort of internally Sweden, is a lot of discussions going on to say that, okay, why should we export or import the high prices from the other parts of Europe? Is that a good idea? And then it becomes some kind of a political issue to be discussed. And looking from the Swedish perspective, I think what you mentioned, these sort of, usually we have sort of a north-south flow in Sweden now, since the big connectors to UK and Germany from Norway. We have a east-west flow, which makes things quite different, and also the nuclear power in Finland. And the question is sort of how to manage that, because the grid is actually built from north to south, more or less. And I think that the picture at the moment is that the interconnects that we have today is adequate for the need that we see. And I think that it's, at the moment, sort of we are not planning any interconnect. So if I look in the plan until 2045, I don't see that we have any plans for any additional interconnectors.
That is it. We can close the panel.
No. At the same time, I know that the AST is sort of doing analysis, looking into the possibility to sort of actually go over Gotland with a link to the Swedish mainland from here. And I think that we are sort of in discussions on that. And I think that things might change quickly in the terms of you say this security perspective, that it might be other advantages than just sort of this socioeconomic perspective that we see.
Additionally, very quick additional questions here. So, but purely from the TSO's perspective, would you say it would be a big problem having an interconnection from the point of view of system operation, simply with, say, with Latvia? Say 700 megawatt cable.
I think that if you sort of do the correct planning analysis and sort of have some kind of a socioeconomic perspective that this is good for us, I think it will be no problems. But I think that if it's sort of driven from the wrong perspective, sort of a political thing that you add in, then it might become difficult, I think.
And fair enough.
Yeah, I'm sitting beside Olivier, 50 hertz. We have this Hansa power bridge that was more or less decided, and then a political decision took that out, which I think that we agree that was maybe not a good decision, but it's a little bit this importing higher prices from other countries. At the same time, I think that if you start to think about these security issues that we're facing, that is a motivator to do.
So probably it's fair to say that there are layers to the issue, all right? So the TSOs can handle almost anything that is being thrown at them, but when it comes to decision making, there are certain layers that come on top of that.
Yeah,
right?
Somehow energy is a little bit political, I think.
It's political and policy energy. Right. So, we touched on security aspects as well, and of course, I mean, I'm speaking about these interconnections, which are so essential for the Baltic states, as all of us understand. And there's Estlink 3 in the pipeline. There's also Harmony Link, which would between Lithuania and Poland, which would improve or open up rather the interconnections or these boards for commercial flows, which are currently very limited due to the main function of Litpol Link. And therefore, of course, the Baltic TSOs are looking very much towards well, having these extra connections, and the logic is quite clear. And the Nord-Balt example between the Swedish price area 4 and Lithuania immediately changed the price situation in the Baltic states, and prices increased just slightly on the Swedish end of the cable, but they significantly decreased on the Baltic side. So, but of course there are different patterns of interaction between price areas, and it's not only about the physical flows, it's also of course how the national markets play out, be it in Finland or in Sweden. So sometimes there have been days recently where the price in Sweden 4 price area is higher than in the Baltic states during some hours, which is interesting. But all right, so back to the ability of the grid to take up these new capacities. There's this word flexibility of the grid, all right? So we have these new capacities which are volatile, and there's plenty of interest from the industry and also financial investors to actually invest and build and construct these huge wind parks, wind farms, not only on land, but when the on-land capacity is reasonably exhausted, then you can go for scalable utility scale projects offshore, and that means that there's higher efficiency, higher return, probably shorter payback time, etc. But then again, the question of flexibility, unless you want to go for export with all of these dozens of terawatts installed, not terawatts, no, probably the gigawatts of capacity installed in the Baltic states. Terawatts, that's about Sweden, more about Sweden, but and hydropower, not about wind and Baltic states. But so these, say, 5 gigawatts of additional wind capacity, I mean, it's already too much for the local consumption. And given that they might actually work as a volatile energy that is suddenly available because the wind is blowing really good in an optimal way. So you need to think not only about the consumption, but also about exporting. And of course, grids come in handy. And there's also the flexibility issue. How would you define the flexibility? And I'm looking here at Ignas probably, because I know, as I said, developers have huge plans for Lithuania, and flexibility. Can you handle it in terms of what to do with all of this energy that suddenly surges in?
Yeah, indeed. And just maybe also touching on the previous question, we do plan for the future where we have excess generation, and we do hope to become, we plan to become net exporters, but with that also comes a lot of fluctuations in the market, a lot of need for flexibility. Personally, I define it quite simply. My personal background, I'm an economist by education, actually from right here in Riga, SSA Riga. I think it can be defined quite simply. We need to achieve that both solar and wind developers have sufficient capture price to make sense of the investments. So we all know the normal graph of prices in the market. When the wind starts blowing or the sun starts shining, we see a huge drop in the prices. When there's nothing generating, we have surges of the prices. So we need sufficient flexibility to sort of make the graph look nice, to make sure that the projects are profitable, at the same time keeping the average cost of electricity for the consumer reasonable. So I think that's the main goal. And all the other tools, how to achieve that, we need to do the math. We need to calculate about the interconnectors. We need to do the math on batteries. And we need to do the math on flexible consumption, local. And yeah, with the hope of providing profitable business for the developers.
Coincidentally, there's a question actually that has come in through Slido, and basically addressing this question and speaking about the surplus energy which all 3 Baltic states are actually intending to export to their neighbors. So we'll be exchanging electrons probably. charge up the cars and carry the electrons to Lithuania or Estonia? I don't know, Gatis, do you think have the calculations been done correctly? The question asks. All of us want to export. Where to?
I think it's two critical building blocks to make a system flexible and to accept this additional volume of renewables. It's interconnections and it's shared market rules. And here you talk about electricity and balancing market rules, which also remunerate flexibility, which incentivize flexibility to appear to invest. And I think TSOs in the region are working on that. So you already mentioned interconnections. I think first wave of next interconnection is this horizontal from Finland through Baltics to Poland, Estlink 3 and Harmony Link including, and force interconnection between Estonia and Latvia. I think it's quite critical, this horizontal. And the next step, next wave, as offshore develops, also this, I call it vertical integration, Germany, be it Sweden. So this becomes a necessity if you want to integrate larger volumes of offshore.
Indeed, and there has been actually a very interesting initiative called Memorandum of Understanding between the TSOs of the Baltic states and 50 Hertz. Swedes have been neutral in this case, probably because of you're situated, you're from Gotland.
Yeah, right.
So, Olivier, would you like to comment briefly on that? Yeah.
Indeed, to be ready for this next wave that you were describing, where you're structurally an exporter, and you must find this sweet spot where you have enough export capacity that in fact you're having good prices in the Baltic countries, but you have a valuable commodity that you can send over to those countries like Germany that will be structurally needing green electricity for the next decades. So even if I'm from the northeast region where we have already 75% of wind and solar, this is not the case for the west and the south of Germany that will be structurally needing green electricity. And that's why we are investigating together, and we have this memorandum of understanding, but on top of it we have also submitted now 2 projects that we are investigating together. One was on the map here as well beforehand, the Baltic Hub, and one is the Baltic Wind Connector. That will be then for the phase 2035 plus, when in fact the next wave of renewables is continuing. And then I think as well we have to analyze together what does it mean for our systems from the different perspectives, sovereignty, markets, socio-economic welfare, decarbonization, etc. And I think we will start also discussing in the next years how to combine that with green molecules. Because I think this is also a source of flexibility we have, not today for the next 2-3 years, but for the wave that comes afterwards, to structurally be able to park, in fact, and to connect those 2 markets, green gas and green electricity. Another source of flexibility. We should not, because I see that also in some fake discussions, people saying, okay, but then this is, we wait for it and then everything will be flexible. It comes with different waves. You have to understand them, you have to get ready for them, and this is the next one we see where I think as well the countries in the Baltic countries will play a very important role in Europe. We see in the North Sea, because we are active in the North and in the Baltic Sea, as 50 Hertz, we see here also a couple of countries that are front runners there, that will be structurally exporting green energy. But I think in the Baltic region, the Baltic countries will play an absolute key role to play, in fact, on those 2 markets and to harvest the potential of your countries.
So basically, you are maintaining that there is strong German interest in having energy import from the Baltic Sea region. Okay,
definitely. This is why we're really taking that serious. And as I said, for different reasons. Everybody's always saying we need electrons. Yes, but we need energy sovereignty.
Yep.
We need security. We need reliability. And this cooperation ticks all those boxes. And this is something really, I must say that very clearly, Germany had a wake-up call a couple of years ago as well. We were thinking that the energy transition, we know how to handle it, etc. And we're having a couple of discussions and we have a master plan. We have discovered that this doesn't work if you're not thinking and planning regionally within Europe in the different seas across the continent, and then I think we're all strong. And it makes no sense to try to optimize it in your own area, even if we have an 80 million area, but even there, it makes no sense. And that's why we are happy to be driving this debate together with our governments, because in fact, as you were saying, TSOs can do a lot, but we are there to serve society and to work with politics. This is what we're doing, investigating now via the TYNDP. And we'll come back when we have then something ready for our decision.
Yeah. There's of course, and I'm looking at Kalle now, and I'll after Kalle I'll switch to Leif again. But so basically, there is place. The memorandum of understanding is still stands strong, and it is not. It has not turned into a memorandum of misunderstanding in any way. So, but there is. Of course, an issue on the table as well, who is going to pay for all of these offshore grids. And I had a very brief discussion prior to the conference during a prep call, and Kalle was thinking out loud and saying, well, we have sort of not exactly backpedaled, but a little bit, but just we are standing still and thinking of how to pull this exercise off without harming the end consumer.
Yeah, well, this is in our in our case as well. It's evident that the future energy model of Europe, when we have selected that it's going to be renewable based, it needs definitely very strong interconnectors, not only electricity but all of the energy carriers. And the huge challenge is that the current system of financing those interconnectors doesn't really take into account the ability of different parts. Very simple example, if we should be investing into new huge connection from Estonia to Germany, our grid tariff, let's say we would be investing half of it, our grid tariff would go 4 times higher than it's today. Simply not possible. So there need to be, just the scales of projects are such, let's say, on totally different levels. Our domestic projects and the international projects. So there need to be somehow such kind of mechanism which actually allows to fulfill the project without putting too much burden on each side.
Right. Well, basically, I mean, it's a fair issue to omit or dismiss the financing aspect of it or the impact on end consumer. That would be a mistake, simply because even more so because a simple average citizen might be thinking, all right, these guys on the stage are talking about gigawatts of wind capacity and zillions of euros invested in the grid, but most of that is going to go to Olivier, it's going to go west. So we need much less for domestic consumption. Why should we be investing in exportability of the TSO? Or why should we be subsidizing German consumers from our economy? I mean, that's the way things sometimes turn out. So, all right. So Leif is also here, and we should make good use of Leif. Of course, Sweden had also, I mean, developers in wind farm developers in Sweden had quite some plans, not only for onshore wind farm development, which has been going quite well after the prices returned to normal from the investment point of view, after being historically very lowest for 5 years, there have also been plans for offshore wind farm development, but I mean, quite a number of those have been omitted. And do you think there's something we can learn in the Baltic states? Can you point to 1 or 2 things why those plans changed, and also what is the system operator's perspective on that very concise way?
Yeah, right. Looking at the Swedish situation, I think that we have like 50 gigawatt of installed production in total, and the offshore wind applications that we got was 110 gigawatts.
All right.
So it was quite a lot, Just in the Baltic Sea, 55 gigawatts of potential wind power. And one of these sort of security issues that we brought up here earlier, the Swedish defense or the Swedish army says, okay, we don't want to have them out there. And I think that was it Giles that talked about it's good for the defense or the army, so to say, and the Swedish army don't really agree there. So I think that of those 55, 30 was sort of taken out of the list due to sort of the defense perspective. But also then there are sort of this we had the mission also to extend the transmission grid to the Swedish territorial waters, which also sort of changed now. So now all the developers need to connect to the transmission grid sort of on the mainland. So there's a lot of things that makes changes from the potential to where we end up in sort of the total amount of
right, but would you? All right. So there's of course this condition of being connected to the Swedish mainland grid. But do you anticipate a scenario where offshore wind farms could actually contribute to these offshore hubs or so-called offshore energy hubs, just like the Bornholm energy hub, for example, between Denmark and Germany? Do you think there's possibility that it might be sometime in the future, say in 10, 15 years? Or it's not realistic?
I think something will happen. That is what I think. Yeah.
All right. Fair enough. I mean, Sweden is net exporter anyway. There are two countries in the Baltic Scandinavian region who are net exporters. That is Norway and Sweden, and today as well. There's very little wind these days. I mean, yesterday and today. Not so much wind there, but still you are exporting over 3 gigawatts of electricity to your neighbors, which is nice. If only there were more interconnections.
Right.
Once again, our time is mercilessly running out.
But a good thing, I think, is the WindWorks conference. I think that we had actually like 40 terawatt hours of wind produced last year, and it's still increasing. So that's sort of very good perspective also into the future on that.
And then to be fair, during those days or periods even of days or weeks when there is good wind in Scandinavia, in Sweden and in Finland, we can enjoy really, really good prices. And whenever the Estlink 2 comes back into operation, I think we'll be enjoying the positive consequences of interconnections, which just once again underline the relevance of the grid. I'm looking at these figures to the left-hand side of myself with anxiety, but which says we have to be wrapping up. So basically, 3 things. Grid is a backbone. I mean, it is a must. It has to be there just to ensure secure supplies of electricity. We cannot forget at the same time about the effects the grid has on the operation of the market. So this is where we are looking to interconnections. Right, and I think we are looking towards interconnection, except for Svenska Kraftnat. But there's also future for the offshore grid, it seems, because at some point it seemed that this idea has been buried, but probably not anymore. There's clearly, well, I don't know if we can say there's clearly a business case, but some sort of business is definitely there. We just have to figure out how to invest in that and how to compensate for the investment. And so all of this basically indicates that there is potential for wind industry in the Baltic Sea area. Most likely those onshore wind farms are going to contribute to the national consumption. And when we are looking at the offshore grid, most likely scenario that is going to go mostly, well, energy sharing. It's just like a car sharing. It's sharing electrons, basically. So wherever it is needed, the electricity has the potential to be there, which is good. All right, so after having these 15 minutes of intense discussion, and I know there's artists there behind my hand. So after these 15 minutes, if you would have to summarize one main task, each of you, that your TSO has to do over the next 5 years, say it's a feasible, it's a horizon that you can be looking at realistically. So 5 years in your TSO. Let's begin with Gatis. one thing.
Well, we have 2 gigawatts of connection points building for renewables, and we are opening up additional 4 or 5 gigawatts. So this will be our main job, onshore renewable connection.
Good news for the industry. Ignas.
Yeah, so 2 things. Firstly, immediately, what we're working at the moment, and we need to continue, is to making sure that batteries are successful in our region. That's something that can be done rather quickly. And then within 5 years, Harmony Link, most definitely top priority.
Fair enough. Kalle.
Well, it's simple things. We purchase huge amount of towers and conductors, put them to the right places, and 100% renewable electricity is guaranteed.
Yes, it's good that the technology, the LCOE, the levelized cost of electricity for certain technologies actually is going down very quickly. Olivier.
And for us, in this context, for the next 5 years, it's ensuring that we have a regional planning that takes into consideration the different needs and benefits, and link it directly to this question of financing, where in fact we're experiencing the same debate in the North Sea right now, that this bilateral stuff, who pays what, etc., in the classical way of doing it, leads to an end, and we have to develop new financial mechanisms to ensure that the benefits and the costs are fairly shared amongst all the participating countries and not only bilaterally.
Yes, probably a little bit more policy coordination in the region as well.
Absolutely. So we must make suggestions how that works, and it must be backed, in fact, by the governance. Then I think we have a breakthrough. Otherwise, the wind party would be over in the 30s, and that's really not what we want.
Right. Leif.
I think...
And new interconnection with Latvia, right?
Let's see. I was thinking that, I mean, building the things that we have planned, I think that's sort of the obvious one. But I think a little bit is a system operations perspective, digitalization. We haven't brought that up, but I think that will be really, really important for all the market integration and how to run the system in total. So I think that is something that we are, I wouldn't say struggle with, but we are sort of on that, and that will bring a lot of work for us in the coming 5 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Big thank you to all of the speakers in the panel.
And a big thank you to our excellent moderator. Round of applause. Thank you very much.
And see you next time again.
Thank you.
And we have to wait, vacate.